Today, we are going to explain the 10 most important members Loudest Band in the world. We have to start with the man in black, Ritchie Blackmore. He wasn't just the lead guitarist, he was the commander. Ritchie founded the band with a specific vision, but he was notoriously difficult to work with. He was a genius, yes. He wrote Smoke on the Water. He created the neoclassical metal genre before it even had a name, but his mood swings were legendary. If he didn't like a singer, he fired him. If he didn't like the cameraman at a festival, he would smash his guitar into the camera lens and set the stage on fire, which actually happened at the California Jam in 1974. He hated being bored, and he treated the band members like chess pieces. Eventually, his need for total control became too much, and he left to form Rainbow. But make no mistake, without Ritchie Blackmore's dark genius, heavy metal as we know it might not exist. If Ritchie was the anger, Jon Lord was the soul. He was the gentleman of the group. While everyone else was trying to be a rock star, Jon Lord was trying to bring Beethoven into a garage band. He revolutionized the sound of the Hammond organ. He didn't play it like a church instrument, he plugged it into a Marshall guitar amplifier and distorted it until it growled like a beast. That sound became the backbone of Deep Purple. He was the glue that held the chaotic personalities together for decades. From the orchestral experiments to the hard rock anthems like Highway Star, Jon Lord proved that a keyboard player could be just as heavy and just as cool as the lead guitarist. He remained with the band through almost every lineup change, a constant pillar of strength until his retirement. Ian Paice has a unique title. He is the only member to appear on every single Deep Purple album in history. He is the engine. While singers were getting fired and guitarists were quitting, Paice just kept playing. He is arguably the most underrated drummer in rock history. He played with a swing feel, influenced by jazz, which gave Deep Purple a groove that bands like Black Sabbath didn't have. Just listen to the intro of Fireball. That is speed and precision that most drummers can only dream of. He never got involved in the politics or the drama. He showed up, he played his heart out, and he went home. He is the heartbeat that kept the band alive for over 50 years. Enter the voice. Ian Gillan. When he joined in 1969, the band transformed from a psychedelic pop group into a hard rock monster. Gillan brought the scream. His performance on Child in Time is legendary, hitting high notes that shattered perceptions of what a male rock singer could do. However, his relationship with Ritchie Blackmore was somewhat toxic. They hated each other. They would have food fights in restaurants. They would refuse to look at each other on stage. Gillan once said that Blackmore had turned into a weird man. Gillan left the band, joined Black Sabbath for a year, which was a bizarre experiment, and then returned to Purple. He is the definitive voice of the band, a man who survived the wars and came out smiling. Roger Glover is often the unsung hero. He was the bassist, yes, but he was also the producer. He was the architect of the sound. He wrote the riffs that made people want to dance and bang their heads. He was fired by Blackmore in 1973 because Ritchie wanted a change, which was a polite way of saying he wanted fresh blood. It was unfair, and it hurt Glover deeply. But he didn't stay bitter. He went on to produce albums for other huge bands like Judas Priest and Rainbow, proving his genius. He eventually returned to Deep Purple and helped guide them through their most commercially consistent years. He is the steady hand on the wheel. When Ian Gillan quit, the band was desperate. They found a demo tape from an unknown 21-year-old who was working in a boutique selling clothes. His name was David Coverdale. He was overweight, he had bad skin, and he had a lazy eye. But his voice was pure blues power. The band hired him and transformed him into a rock god. Coverdale brought a funkier, sexier, bluesier sound to the band with albums like Burn and Stormbringer. He went from folding shirts to headlining festivals in front of 200,000 people overnight. But as his fame grew, so did his ego. After Deep Purple fell apart, he formed Whitesnake and became an even bigger star, proving that his discovery was a 1 in a million lottery win. Glenn Hughes was hired as the bassist, but he sang so well that he basically became the co-lead singer. He called himself the voice of rock, and honestly, he wasn't wrong. He brought Stevie Wonder-style funk and soul into the heavy metal mix. However, his time in the band was chaotic. Glenn fell deep into cocaine addiction. It got so bad that during live concerts, he would forget where he was, or he would step on David Coverdale's vocal lines, screaming over them just to show off. He was incredibly talented, but totally out of control. His addiction contributed heavily to the collapse of the Mark III and Mark IV lineups. Replacing Ritchie Blackmore is an impossible job. But Tommy Bolin tried. He was an American jazz fusion wizard, incredibly talented but deeply troubled. He brought a totally different vibe to the band, more groove, less heavy metal. Some fans hated it, some loved it, but Tommy had a demon on his back. His addiction was severe. There were nights on tour where his arm was so numb from injection usage that he physically couldn't play the guitar properly. The rest of the band, specifically John Lord and Ian Paice, had to cover for him on stage. It was a disaster waiting to happen. The band broke up in 1976, and tragically, Tommy died of an overdose just a few months later at the age of 25. This is the most controversial era. In 1989, Ian Gillan was fired. Again. Ritchie Blackmore wanted a singer he could control. So he brought in Jolyn Turner, his singer from Rainbow. The result was an album called Slaves and Masters. It was a good album, but it wasn't Deep Purple. It sounded like pop rock. It sounded like Foreigner or Journey. The fans hated it. They rebelled. The tour ticket sales were terrible because nobody wanted to see Deep Purple turned into a radio-friendly pop band. It was a mistake that proved the band needed Ian Gillan's voice to truly be themselves. Turner was fired, and Gillan returned for the 25th anniversary. After Ritchie Blackmore quit for the final time in the middle of a tour in 1993, everyone thought Deep Purple was dead. Who could possibly replace the Man in Black? Enter Steve Morse, an American virtuoso with a smile on his face. He was the opposite of Blackmore. He was nice, he was approachable, and he was a technical monster on the guitar. He didn't try to copy Ritchie. He brought his own style. He revitalized the band's energy. With Steve Morse, Deep Purple toured the world for 28 years, without a single fight, without a single drama. He saved the band and allowed them to become the touring legends they are today. He proved that sometimes a band doesn't need a dictator. It just needs a great musician who loves to play. So there you have it. 10 legends who built, destroyed, and rebuilt Deep Purple over 50 years. This isn't just a band, it's a survival story. Through the genius of Ritchie Blackmore, the soul of John Lord, the power of Ian Gillan, and the steadiness of Ian Paice, Deep Purple became one of the most influential rock bands in history. But that influence came at a cost. The egos were massive. The fights were legendary. Food fights in restaurants, guitarists refusing to look at singers on stage, managers firing bassists just because they wanted a change, addiction destroying talented musicians. And through it all, one drummer just kept playing, never getting involved in the drama, just showing up and doing the work. What makes Deep Purple unique is that they survived. Most bands would have collapsed after the first major fight. Deep Purple collapsed multiple times and came back stronger. When Ritchie Blackmore left, everyone thought it was over. When Tommy Bolin died, the world mourned, but they kept coming back. Why? Because the music was too important. The fans demanded it. And deep down, even through all the hatred and the arguments, these musicians respected each other's talent. They might not have been friends, they might not have even liked each other, but they knew they were creating something special together. Without the chaos, maybe the music wouldn't have been as intense, as powerful, as legendary. Every lineup had its own identity. Mark II gave us Machine Head, arguably the greatest hard rock album of all time. Mark III gave us the funk and soul of Burn. Mark IV gave us the experimental edge of Come Taste the Band. And the later lineups, with Steve Morse, gave us consistency and longevity that allowed the band to tour the world and introduce new generations to the Deep Purple sound. So which lineup is the best? That's the debate that will never end. Are you Team Gillan or Team Coverdale? Do you prefer the classical fury of Ritchie Blackmore or the smiling virtuosity of Steve Morse? Do you love the funk era or the pure hard rock era? The beauty is that there's no wrong answer. Every era has its champions. Every lineup has its masterpiece. Deep Purple proved that a band doesn't need to stay the same to stay great. They proved that change, even painful change, can lead to evolution. Ian Paice, the only constant, once said that Deep Purple is like a river. The water keeps flowing, but it's never the same water. The musicians change, the sounds evolve, but the spirit remains. That spirit is what conquered the world. That spirit is what made them legends. Today, Deep Purple is still touring. Ian Gillan is still screaming, though not as high as he used to. Ian Paice is still the engine. Roger Glover is still the steady hand, and new members have joined to carry the torch forward. The soap opera continues, but the legacy is secure. Deep Purple changed rock music forever. They proved that a Hammond organ could be as heavy as a guitar. They wrote the riff that every beginner guitarist learns. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your stories. Did you see them live? What was your first Deep Purple song? Which member inspired you the most? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of rock's most chaotic and brilliant bands, hit that subscribe button. There are so many more rock stories to tell, so many more legends to explore, so many more soap operas with loud guitars. Until next time, keep the volume up and keep rocking.